Communication. So, first off, just a huge thank you. Thank you for the land acknowledgement, and thanks for including me today. And so, I show up today not thinking that I'm an expert in anything, but rather just a lifetime of learning that has brought me to this space that I'm in today. And I'm glad to collaborate with all of you. Now, I'm hoping some of you are ready to interact today because I actually have a couple of moments in the presentation where I'm hoping that I can engage with you, and there'll be a couple of questions very early on. So for those of you who are interested, please note that how I function is really simple. I expect you guys to just jump in. So you don't have to formally put your hand up, although you can, and I will try to track that as best to my ability, and maybe Colleen can help me if I miss anyone. But what I really hope is that you guys just unmute yourselves and jump in. And today's about us sort of co-learning and co-leading this together. And I do have some lessons that we've learned through the way that I'll share, but it's really about working together. So if it's all right, I'll start sharing my presentation. And then the first thing that I'm going to want is just to make sure that everybody is seeing that presentation. So if I can get somewhat of an acknowledgement from everyone that you guys are seeing my screen, does that sound good? I see some yeses and some pluses, and so I'll take that as a very positive thing. Okay, I'm just going to stretch my screen here so I can see everybody who's in here. Awesome. Okay, so I was asked today to come talk to you guys about crisis communication, and I kind of just gave it a little tagline just to have a little bit of fun with it and saying when things go sideways online. And so the reality of crisis communication, and we'll talk about it today, is that it's not always well, it doesn't always seem that big in the moment. Sometimes we make big things out of small things, and sometimes we shouldn't be reacting at all, and we do. And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today and trying to figure out when it's appropriate to do what and how we should do those things. So, as Colleen mentioned, I've been around for a while, and so you'll see here on the screen, I've been basically leading the nonprofit sector for over 30 years. Believe it or not, my first executive director position that I got, I was 17 years old. I was a kid coming out of high school, and I started running a group out of British Columbia in Vancouver. I showed up there for a 1 month contract. I literally packed my entire, well, what I would call my room, basically what I had, into a car that I newly bought, and I drove myself to Vancouver for a 1 month contract to run a provincial games over there for the French language youth organization. And within a month, the executive director had left because he was joining the RCMP, and all of a sudden, I found myself the only employee. And so they put me as interim executive director at the age of 17. So I'll be honest, I've been doing this a long time, and I've learned a lot of lessons along the way. And to be honest, I did it wrong for a long time, and I've learned through the years. So, um, what I call my current passions. These are the things that I'm involved in. There's a kind of a list here, but I am the executive director for the Al Ritchie Community Association. Currently, right now, we're serving over 55,000 people every single year. This year alone, we've handed out over 125,000 pounds of food and 105,000 pounds of clothing. The Queen City Eastview Community Association, we run the Eastview Community Center. We serve about 30,000 people in that facility. And we're actually right now we're in the process of finalizing the last steps to building a brand new park for our community. We've been begging for one from the city officials for years, and unfortunately, it hasn't happened. But we were able to raise $450,000, which is what it costs now to actually build a brand new park. And so there's a play structure that's going to be built this September for our community. The ALS Society of Saskatchewan, which I'll be touching most on today. So basically, what we do is we support those who have been diagnosed with ALS in this province. For those of you who don't know what ALS is, it's basically a motor degenerative disease. It progresses very quickly, and we have right now in Saskatchewan about 73 people that are registered in Saskatchewan to have ALS, and life expectancy on average for the disease is 2 to 5 years. In Saskatchewan, it's less than 18 months. One of the reasons for that is because we tend to diagnose very late in our province. My work for l'Assemblée communautaire françaiscoise. So yes, I've been working to move forward French language education and French language rights across Western Canada. And so French is my first language, if you can't tell by my name, Denis Simard. But I do go by Denis. If anybody feels uncomfortable saying Denis, that's totally fine. I've got my own consulting firm as well, which is at the bottom of the list. But I'm also proud to say that we're going to be hosting the next National Francophone Games in 2028. And so we just finished the bid process for that, and Regina is going to be hosting 1,200 athletes artists and leaders from across Canada, age 14 to 18 in 2028 in the summer of 2028. So happy to do that. So anyway, enough about me. Let's get into the sort of topic of today. We'll have a couple learning objectives that we'll go through, understanding what actually defines a crisis. We'll learn some response strategies, some tricks, some nonprofit scenarios, and obviously just some Q&A. So at any point today, this is meant to be. So at any point, I'm asking you guys to jump in if you feel comfortable doing so. And so really the first thing to sort of define is what is a crisis? What would we find ourselves in that would be sort of defined as a crisis? And the best definition that I have that I've been using for years is a crisis is the perception of an unpredictable event that threatens stakeholder or public expectations and reputation. So really there's two elements of that. There's perception and then there's impact. And those are really the really if you're talking about a crisis is there's a lot of things that happen, and we'll talk about it. All of us who run nonprofits have people every single day who, in a sense, troll us, who say all kinds of nasty things and who respond and do. The truth is that's my comment at the bottom of this slide is one negative or a few negative comments do not equal crisis. They just unfortunately exist. It's the new reality of doing business. It doesn't make it right, but unfortunately that is the state of the world that we are in, and we just need to learn to deal with those things and access the tools like, blocking, erasing messages, doing the things that are required for people that are only there to stir up trouble, who aren't actually trying to move the needle in any way. And so a crisis needs to have not just a question of how it's being perceived, but it actually has to have a significant impact. And that impact can be measured in multiple ways. So before we start anything else, this is where I hope I can get a couple of you to start talking about what you've gone through. Have any of you felt like you've been in a situation of crisis anytime, whether it's the last year or two? What did that feel like for your nonprofit? What was the tipping point where you knew something was about to happen and you kind of felt, oh, I think we've just crossed this line that I think now we're in a crisis moment. So was there anybody who's willing to share their story about something that they've gone through in their nonprofit? I'm expecting a couple brave people to sort of just turn their camera on and say, I'll speak. I swear I'm a nice guy. Oh, Jackie, please go ahead.
I've had tons of crisis experience in different places where I've been the executive director. Way long time ago, we had a investigation done at Regina Native Women's Association. This would have been about 1987, I think. And that was the first real crisis I think that I ever handled as an ED, when you have white collar crime coming in to do an investigation. And of course, this is way back in the day before there was social media or anything like that. But it was amazing how quickly the press got a hold of that. And
Mm.
how, as a very young ED, I was trying to channel the waters in there, and what a mess that was. And through the years, I think at many organizations that I was ED of, we had all sorts of different crises, particularly with programs like Regina Anti-Gang Services, where you were dealing with individuals that had pretty high profile criminal backgrounds, or working with different organizations that were going through crises, and the involvement of having different staff members working at different places. And yeah, oh yeah, crisis became my middle name for a whole lot of years.
Well, I'm glad you're here, Jackie, because hopefully you'll be able to contribute to the conversation today. Is there anybody else who wants to sort of share about experiences they've had at their organizations? And please feel free to leave your cameras on. I love seeing you. It makes my life so much better when I get to see all these beautiful, faces in the canvas that who we are. Anybody else want to share? And I'm not forcing anyone, so I will absolutely move on. I do recognize a couple names and faces, and I know some of you are brave, so I'm just going to assume at one point you're going to jump in with me. So just a huge thank you then for being here, for sharing with the story today. And the goal here is for us to sort of co-learn, like I said. So once you've listened to the stuff that I'm saying, and maybe you can go, you know what, I've got things I want to add to that. That's the whole point today in having this experience and working together. So the next thing I want to talk about is, why are we different? Like, why is working for a nonprofit so different from so many other scenarios that exist? And why is it important for us to maybe understand that difference when we're addressing the types of sort of attacks and things that may happen to us? And so the first one is really the high emotional environment. I think most people sort of, although it's kind of true in all sectors, I think it stands out in the nonprofit sector in regards to the fact that we're working with vulnerable people. And when we're working with vulnerable people, emotions are always high. So we're talking about sensitive issues. We're talking about people's everyday survival. We're talking about people that are talking about being in crisis themselves every single day, having to make life and death choices sometimes. And so I think people don't realize that the nonprofit sector has become, and this is the word I tend to use a lot, a catch-all. There's a whole bunch of government services and there's a whole bunch of things that exist in the world, but not a lot of our people always figure out how to make that puzzle work for them. And so we, as the nonprofit sector, have to sort of be that catch-all where they walk into our space. Why? Because we've created this relationship of trust, and they tend to expect us to be the experts in everything. And although we are very good, and I recognize a ton of leaders in this room today that I know are very good at what we do, I don't think any of us would purport to say that we are experts in everything. We're just really good at trying to figure things out, and we're really good at trying to direct people to the right resources. Next part there is the question of public trust. So one of the big unique things about the public sector, and specifically the nonprofit sector, is that we are an element of public trust. Why are people selecting to come to us? Why are they walking through our doors before they go anywhere else? Is because we've created this space for them to feel safe. To be able to tell their story, to be able to feel like they're being humanized, they're being treated as a full person when they walk through our doors. So that element of public trust is something that's a huge asset for us, but it's also there, which within lies that risk of crisis and sort of degrade that trust because somebody's making attacks on us. It can be extremely hurtful for organizations like ours who are spending 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years to build the type of relationship and reputation that we have with our clientele and our people in our community. The biggest one for all of us, none of us are going to be surprised by this one, is we're often under-resourced. So I know for myself, I'll speak, for example, the associations that I work for, we don't have PR teams. We barely have communication departments. I'll be honest, as the executive director, I find myself wearing about 15 hats. I'm sure all of you feel the exact same way. You are the PR department. You are the accounting department. You are the audit company. You're doing everything. And yet, we're still expected to be functioning as an executive director or a leader member of our organization and doing everything that we do. And so when a crisis shows up, we don't have a plan most of the time. We have strategies, we have policies, we have all these other things, but oftentimes that occupying that space. And that means that we're basically dropping everything else to deal with whatever this circumstance is. And again, I don't think most people realize that. You go see large businesses and they have a PR crisis. Coke has a PR crisis. Well, what do? Well, they've got 3 trillion lawyers and they've got a communications department of 70,000 people that are going to create a strategy in 20 minutes to figure out how they're going to respond to it. Well, I'm sorry to say that equivalent is you. And so we need to have the tools and strategies to be able to find that. And that's really hard to do. Last one is that our stakeholders have a dual role. Not only are they our community, but they're our clients. The same people that walk through our doors who are selecting us every single day to say, I want to work with this nonprofit, are often the times the next one that are going to come through the door the next day saying, I am now in crisis. I need food. I need clothing. Somebody's threatening to take my kids. I don't know how to navigate this system. I don't understand this or that. And so we are playing this dual role with our community members that we're building trust with, who are also our clients who are accessing services. And I think that is often neglected in the way that we talk about our public. I'll move on to the next slide. Here's the reality check. Crisis often comes, specifically in the nonprofit sector, from our clients who often feel unheard or mistreated, or they may be escalating a concern or a grievance into something that's going to be reputationally harmful for the organization. And sometimes we do the very best. Like I know for myself, one of my organizations, we have these great volunteers who are greeting our people every single day. They're called care ambassadors. We love them to death. But sometimes they say something just silly. And so then from that interaction, that person goes out and says, this organization said this to me today. Well, an individual and organization may have said that. Was that the intention, what they said? No. Why is the intention to harm us when you were actually accessing our services and feel that you were misspoke to. And so there's a lot of times sometimes that it's things get escalated quickly that maybe don't need to be. Our community members and our internal relationships are super important, but sometimes our own staff, our own board, our own volunteers are the one that are going to escalate things publicly because I don't know if you've ever had this happen. I've had this happen at some boards. I'm not saying the ones that I'm with today are like this, but we have a vote that happens at a board level meeting, and you've got seven people over here on one side, and you got two people here on the other. And the people that got voted against basically got voted down because the resolution went a different way, feel so negative about the situation that they have to go public about it. They need to go say, but a basic principle of how functioning boards is that you up to the moment of that vote and that final decision can advocate for whatever position you want. But from the moment you make that decision as a collective, as a board, everyone must respect that decision. Everyone must stand behind that decision. That's often misunderstood. You are allowed to have a negative thought in regards to how it felt. And sure, you can feel all those things, but that doesn't give you the right then to go public and say, I voted against this and I don't feel right about this. That's not what the law, the Nonprofit Act in Saskatchewan allows. And so these are the kinds of things that I think sometimes we find ourselves in the nonprofit sector. Boards, when it comes to like large businesses, well, then it's like you're signing NDAs and you've got lawyers and you've got all these other things. We're really built on trust. We're built on principles that are trying to work with one another, and that oftentimes helps us and hurts us. So I'm going to share a little bit of a case study, something that happened to us, one of the organizations that I work for, which is the ALS Society of Saskatchewan. All of you probably know the organization. What you may not know is that we have a period of time every year where it's our big fundraising season. It's our season where this is where we make all our money is basically in 3 months. A reminder that the ALS Society has no government funding. It's all public donor money that allows us to function. And we're supporting people across the entire province who are diagnosed with ALS. How it functions is the moment they get diagnosed with the ALS at the ALS clinic in Saskatoon, the next person who walks into the room is actually my client care specialist, who basically sits down with them and says, I know you've just been told you have ALS. You're not alone in this. And so that client care specialist is now with them literally from moment one till the last moment that that person is with us in this province. And we accompany that family and we provide them equipment and supplies and everything else. Well, our big month is the month of June. June is known as ALS Awareness Month, and it's our big fundraiser month every single year where we do our walks. Well, it's not uncommon for us to have somewhat people who, A, don't understand the disease, B, um, we deal with families who have lost someone. So sometimes we get people who, when we're sort of putting out posts and saying, hey, we're looking for your support. We really want, all the money to come back to support the people that are diagnosed with ALS in Saskatchewan. It's not uncommon for us to have a few people, a few families sometimes who just say, hey, we feel like we didn't get all the best support we could have while our person was living with ALS in Saskatchewan. Absolutely. That's totally fine. We welcome those conversations. But what made last year somewhat interesting for us is that right from moment one, when we started creating our post in regards to talking about ALS, is we actually started getting attacked by someone pretty viciously, and we weren't really sure where it was coming from. And so these attacks were saying all kinds of untruths or varied things about the organization that really made it feel like we were wasting public money, that we weren't taking care of people with ALS in our province, that we weren't doing a lot of the right things. And so we found ourselves in a very reactive position at the worst time of the year because we know that these are the months that we count on to be able to have the organization live. So if that impact is going to be a reduction in donations and anything else, we know ultimately the impact is we're actually going to be reducing the amount of care we can provide people with ALS in this province. And so we were pretty scared about it. Next part that really shook us to the core is who was attacking us. So it's really common that we get people who attack us for all kinds, just accept those. This one was special to us because this was actually one of our ALS clients. Somebody who actually gets our services, who actually knows what we're doing, who actually understands the type of work that we were doing. And they were attacking us. And then our board really found themselves in a situation of like, A, why? Why is this the avenue that this person has chosen to do, knowing that it's going to harm everyone in the ALS Society and all the clients that we have? Add to this the fact that the person who was attacking us actually was a board member. And so we found ourselves in this like triple threat situation where a lot of things were going on. And so I'll just speak to what ALS is, but obviously ALS is a disease that's taking stuff away from people. And so is it uncommon for any of our clients to feel like they're mad, that they're sad, that they feel like they're in an unjust situation? Heck no. They feel that every single day. Is it uncommon for us to try to support them in that process by providing them support groups and equipment and all kinds of things? Absolutely. But we found ourselves in a situation where really someone internal to us was now saying a whole bunch of things, which, in full transparency, some of them were like borderline, there was truths in them, but most of it was really an unfair representation of who we were and what we were doing. And so it really required us to figure out how to react. Now, add to this person, well connected, obviously connected to all the other patients across the province and to patients across the country and patients across the world. ALS is a small world. Once you get into it and you are someone who's recognized as a leader in that field, we all know each other. So when this one person started sort of posting a whole bunch of stuff to us, well, we started getting questions from across the world. Literally, people were posting as responses to the attacks, sort of saying, well, why is this happening? Why are you as a society acting this way? Why are... And these were all reactions to the original post, not our reaction, because at this point we hadn't put one out. And so, really, it forced us to re-examine how we deal with these crisis situations. I'll be honest, we had part of our board which was like, we have to hit back. We have to make a statement and say that these things are untrue and that we need to make sure that we're protecting sort of the reputation that we've built over 40 years. And then there was another group that said, well, is there another way? Is there another way to sort of look at this? And really, what it came down to for us, and this is our analysis, is that we were dealing with someone who obviously was dealing with a disease, who obviously is hurting, who obviously is losing things in their life because of the disease and was lashing out. Fine. They chose to lash out at us. Fine. There's going to be consequences for that lashing out for us in the sense of economics and funding and fundraising and all of those other things. But would it then be appropriate for us to attack back? Would it then be appropriate for us to go out in the community and, who knows, hurt this person, their family, their children by saying anything that we were going to say? And so we chose to take a different path. We chose to indicate via email to this individual that we were willing to sit down and have a conversation. And we were wondering why the things that were being brought up on blast across social media hadn't been brought up at the table when they're sitting at the boardroom level, when they had a chance to come sit down with us. And I'll be super transparent with you and say that the attacks didn't stop for the entire month of June. It was purposeful, but our reaction to it was very measured. And so what we did is we chose to take every person who was attacking us consistently and invite them to have a conversation with us and sit down with us, even if it didn't stop the online attacking. We chose to individually sit down with every single one of those people and say, listen, we're going to have a conversation with you, and we want to just tell us your grievances. Tell us what it is that you're frustrated about. Tell us what you're mad about. And I'll be honest, the things that came out of that were really revealing, because one of the things that came out was, well, I live in another province that has an ALS society, and in this province, we get these types of services and we get these types of supports. And why are you not providing that in Saskatchewan? Great question. Do you mind if I give you an answer? And what it comes out to is, for example, I'll just use numbers so that we have generics. I'm a client in BC who gets supported by the ALS Society of British Columbia, and I feel like we have better care over here than what you're providing your clients in Regina. And the answer was, you absolutely are, 100%. The difference between ALSBC is that's an organization that has $6 million on an annual basis, including $1 million provided by the government of British Columbia to them every single year to support those supported that have the ALS disease. They're now funding on an annual basis $5 million worth of research to move the ALS needle in that province. Do you want to know how much money I get from the government of Saskatchewan? Not a penny. So would it not then be expected that the level of service be different? Of course. But once people understood, the attacks started to go away. So a lot of the people that were in periphery to the attack were able to slowly be dealt with in a sense of sort of saying, hey, let's have this conversation. Let's figure out why you're attacking us. And we were able to figure out strategies with every single one of those to explain to them what was going on. Now, of course, our main attacker, the person who started all this, didn't feel like any of those answers were justified, didn't feel like they wanted to stop attacking us. But we really took a different approach. And so we, after a few weeks, actually just put out a post and just said, listen, likely all of you have seen the attacks that are happening online. These are the steps that we're taking. We've chosen not to address these attacks directly, except to those who wanted to speak to us individually, because we're happy to do that. What we will say is this, and then we came back to talk about who we are. This is what we do. This is what we do every single day. This is how we accompany people with ALS in this province every single day. Oh, and by the way, we do that without any support from any government agency in this province. We do that because of donors like you who every day make a choice to invest in anyone you want. Any nonprofit in this province could be supported by you, and somehow you still showed up and you decided to give us your money. And to us, that's trust. And we wanted to thank you for that level of trust. And we wanted you to know how much it means to us that you're providing us that opportunity. And so that was what we did. And it shattered us in the sense that it cost us by the end of the month $25,000. What it also provided us is because of the way we dealt with it, we actually made new friends. We made new allies. We had new donors. We had people who saw the way we reacted to it and reached out to us and said, hey, I think it's unfair that what's happening is this, and these things are being said when you've just explained why, and I get that. And so what I want to do is I want to make an extra donation this year of $1,000, and I want it to go to support you with the losses that you guys have had. And we had people like that who showed up for months after, who, after everything died down, weren't willing to be part of the fray, the party that was happening at that month in June, but were willing to come back to us in July and August after everything died down and said, you know what, I didn't want to get involved. I didn't want to be part of that social media fluster. But I really like the way you guys reacted to it. And I really like the fact that you told us your story. And instead of trying to defend yourself, what you did is you doubled down on speaking about what you do. And you doubled down about trying to have everybody understand why it is that you guys are doing what you're doing. And yeah, you're having to make some really tough choices. Our annual budget's $250,000. The annual budget of my cohort in Alberta is 3 million. In BC is 6 million. In Ontario is 12 million. I can't compete with that. They have 20 client service agents who are dealing with hundreds of clients. I have one. I have one client care specialist who accompanies 72 people, 73 people right now in this province who are diagnosed with ALS. On top of that, we're also accompanying their parents, their children, their family members who are seeking questions. That's one person doing all of that work. Yeah, I can 100% guarantee you if we had more resources, we could do more. I 100% guarantee you that if we had more ability to serve, to do more things, you would get better services. Absolutely. But the response to that is not give us less, it's give us more. And so we just needed to reframe it. We needed to change the conversation. So that's the case study that we're going to talk about today. Talk about that I've shared with you. What I'd love to sort of talk about is what were the things that were really at play for us in that conversation. And you'll notice on the scale that I've used, it actually says truth and truth. Because the reality is we live nowadays in a world where everybody believes their truth. And the client who was attacking us, she was true in how she felt. There was nothing wrong about how she felt. She felt what she did. She was in her own crisis. She was going through her own things, and she has the right to feel the way she does. Did she have the right to react to it the way she did and attack us? Maybe not, but that was her truth. So we spoke about our truth. We told of our story. And it didn't really become a question of who was right or wrong, but it really became a question about understanding that truth and really coming back to what I've written on the screen here, compassion. Once people realized that we were not the ones saying pretty atrocious things, and specifically, we weren't naming names, we weren't doing things of that nature, people kind of liked the way that it was very respectfully done, and that they could tell we were being compassionate about a situation that was very difficult. The other part of this was we wanted to protect our staff because obviously, when you start talking about our organizations publicly in any way, your staff can't help but feel a certain way about it. It's just the reality of the situation. And so it was very important for us to sit down with our staff and coach them and teach them and make them feel like they were being supported in all of this. And of course, I spoke about it earlier, but that public trust is huge. We don't want to lose that reputation that we've built over those years. And of course, we had an underlying objective of fundraising. That was our core tension. Those are the things that we were figuring out. Basically, one of the theories that we used in this, which is part of our education process today that we're going to have as a group, is we're going to call it situational crisis communication theory. And so, one of the things that I think it's good for everybody to examine is understand this concept because it really led us in this conversation. So, the basic understanding of this theory is that your response needs to depend on two fundamental things. And the first one is how responsible people think you actually are. And number two is the history and trust you've established with your audience. And what we mean by that is that, like, if everybody agrees that you're wrong, well, you're probably wrong. If everyone in the world is looking at your scenario and saying, you know what, no matter how I interpret what's being put in this social media space, I would say the ALS Society was wrong in this situation. If that was the case, and if we weren't getting emails and supporting things and all those other things, our response might have been different. Next is the level of trust we've created with our community. We had to evaluate it. So this was a tough one because this was actually coming from our community, someone who was, diagnosed with ALS. Does that mean we've lost all trust in our ALS community? We had to gauge that. We had to figure that out. And the good thing for us is we actually have people who have ALS who are on our board, including this person. And so we went to the other people who have ALS on our board and we said, is this pervasive? Is this everyone who thinks this way? Is this a thing that we just weren't aware of, that we weren't clocking in any way? And we were able to find out that no, it wasn't really that. So I'm going to ask you a fundamental question. How would you have dealt with it? And this is where I want us to sort of have a real conversation. So I told you what we did. We'll talk about whether that was successful and all the other things in a little bit, but I'd love to hear what you guys would have done. So this is one of your clients. This is one person that every single day knows your story, knows everything about you, who's attacking you online in one of the worst periods of time of the year for your organization. What's your reaction? What would you have done? I'd love to hear your opinions. And that's for the students too, eh? Even though you've not lived these experiences, I'd love to hear your theory behind what you think you want to do. So please, both community members and students, pipe in if you can. I'm leaving a big space here for you guys. Lynn,
Well, I think, yeah, hey, how are you? I think probably we would have handled it in much the same way that you did, to be very strategic in how we respond and not reactive. Again, tell our story, try to get the trust back, and try to put a positive spin on it. And I'm thinking of a situation we've been in recently, whereas, we've been, wasn't that we were attacked online or anything like that, but there was a situation where we were kind of left out of decisions and whatever. So we're trying to put a positive spin on it. This has now enabled us to go in another direction. So I think I would have handled it in much the same way that you did, and just to try to stay positive and try to rebuild trust and tell our story and make sure that everyone knows that why we do what we do, and that isn't gonna stop.
I appreciate that, Lynn.
Yeah.
Do we have a student perspective? Do we have a brave one in the bunch who's willing to talk about how they think they would have looked at it or done something different? No, I got people even shutting their cameras off. They're like, don't talk to me.
I'm not a
Jack,
student, but I, of course, will chime in. I love the way that you handled it because I think that compassion has to be the forefront. I think in a nonprofit setting, particularly in your case study, because this is real, when you have somebody from, I will call the inside, that is doing something like this, absolutely you need compassion because they are hurting. And people who act out like that, no matter what the nonprofit is or what the situation is, usually there's a part of them that they're acting out of hurt or they're acting out of anger, or compassion is the only way to deal with it. And I think you did a really good job in all of this. And plus, in a position of ED, holding everything steady, being able to walk that balance beam between your board, what was happening, the press, your staff. I think that people don't always understand that when it comes to those types of position, you are on a balance beam the whole time doing this. And I think that a lot of the students need to realize that when you're going into nonprofit, um, that is the job of the people that work in the admin part of it, is you have to be able to walk that balance beam. I think you guys did a great job on that.
Well, thanks, Jackie. Appreciate that. And I agree. Sometimes it felt we were on a needle pin. We're literally just like it could have gone so many different ways. And I agree. The ED position is a tough one in this because not only am I director of communications, I'm executive director, I'm creating strategy, I'm writing letters just in case we have to deal with lawyers, and I'm trying to figure out every single post that was written by me because it needed to meet that special note that needed to say the right thing without sort of saying the wrong thing. And so people don't realize sometimes that what's all encompassing in what we do. So I appreciate that. I see Tanisha had her hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to jump in, and something that I noticed when you were talking and how you guys reacted to the situation is the way that you reacted was very in line with the values you hold as an organization, which I think is very important because it just further reiterates that, like, building trust with other people. If you're reacting in ways that reflect your own values as an organization, I think that's really important.
100%. And I think at the end of the day, I think we are who we are, not at our best moments, but at our worst moments, right? And I think that's the true test of most organizations, but nonprofits specifically. I think when the entire world is coming down on us, it's so easy for us to, in a sense, abandon who we are because we're scared, because we're frightened, because we're so trying to protect everything that we lash out. And I think really fundamentally, it really comes down to the best test for me. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I actually sit on 7 boards, and so I chair 5, and so I work with many other organizations. And the biggest test for me about the healthiness of a board is really it comes down to those situations where things kind of like things go bad. I love those moments as a president or as someone who sits on a board because I love to see the reaction in the room. Not because it's a test, but because it really tells us who we really are. Because it'd be so easy for us to go down those other avenues and attack back and do all those other things. And if that's the reaction, I know right away I'm sitting in the wrong room. And so it allows me to really sometimes to sort of say this jokingly, but not. I think every organization needs a test once in a while. Is to have something happen to them because it really tells us who we really are. Mindy, please jump on in.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't think I was going to be on camera today, so I didn't fix my
Oh, we
hair or
don't care. We
anything.
don't care.
I was just what you were saying about building trust and how it sometimes has to go through tests. That's sort of what I was thinking of with some of your questions too, is that like with relationship building, relationships have to be tested to make them grow. And that's something that you come across in business too. There's going to be failures in communication. It's unavoidable. And it can be so hard to meet those challenges. But when you do, um, those can be your best customers, your best clients, because you've gone through something maybe where they expected you to fail or to come back at them and not satisfy their concern. But when you go and you follow your values and you try to work it out and you make that effort, those are the people that will stick with you. And there's just no other way to do it except to go through those really hard times. So that's just kind of what was coming to my mind as we were talking about that. And I would have been proud to have responded in the way that your organization did, because I understand how difficult that would be and how stressful. Um, but to stay true to your values is so important. So
I
that's
appreciate that.
yeah, just my thoughts.
And you got nothing to be shy about, camera. You look great. So just
Okay,
so
all
true.
right.
So
Thanks for the validation.
I do want to add that one of the things that really came out of this that was awesome for us was that one of the people that was attacking was actually a highly respected person with ALS in this country who's been advocating at a national level, and who joined this person in the attacks because they've known this person for a very long time since they had been diagnosed. And so this is one of the people that we were able to take offline and sort of say, hey, like, I get it. I get why you're reacting this way, but have you bothered to ask us one simple question to say whether this is true or validate any of the information you're being provided? And what we did is oh man, I'll be honest with you, I spent with this individual alone one night, probably 6 hours going back and forth through text messages, really trying to have him understand us and me understand him. And what came from that interaction that night, and hear this, students, yes, 6 hours of my personal time was spent trying to deal with somebody who was trying to attack us online. Sometimes that's part of the reality of what we do, is we were able to find a place in which he said, you know what, I think one of the things that you guys are missing as an organization is a policy that would talk about how lived experience is important for your organization and how it would be great to have that be more prevalent in everything that you guys do. Wow. Thanks for that idea. I'd love to create a policy that do you have one that would be available? And so he provided us a copy of a policy about lived experience that we hadn't had. We in principle, I'd always believed that, but we had never really put it into a policy and something that was very structured. And so he provided us a policy, which was really the end of this conversation with this individual. And I said, I promise you, I will bring this to the board for approval. That ended that conversation for that individual. He felt he had done the thing that he wanted to do, the change that he thought he wasn't seeing in our organization. He was validated in that moment. I'm proud to say that that policy got brought to the board and it got approved that same night. We now have a lived experience for people with ALS in regards to a policy about how we include them in everything that we do. I'll tell you how everything finished with this individual when we get closer to the end of the presentation today, but I do want to sort of ask one last time. Anybody want to add anything about sort of this moment, or even just a moment they had with their organization, how they dealt with it, and maybe a lesson they learned in it? Because next we're going to kind of get into a couple theories about what's the best approach.
I liked your approach of reaching out to other people and asking them what they thought, just to see if this was more widespread than the
Mm-hmm.
individual who was being vocal.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate that. Okay, one last call. Anybody else want to say anything? Even those people that are pretending to sleep behind the black screen? No? Okay, well, we'll start moving on. Thanks so much, everybody. I really enjoy the participation. So, what I'm going to provide you guys now is a practical framework. This is something that we've now sort of adopted in principle. It's not nothing new. It's really an easy way, but it's a strategy now that I use, and actually I've been using for all my organizations that I would sort of advocate for anybody who finds themselves in this type of situation. And this is the most important. Pause. Why is pause so important? Because the truth is we tend to, by human nature, have one reaction, which is the most important one in our moment, which is emotional. When we feel attacked, the first thing we want to do, and that's kind of like instinctual fight or flight. Oh, I got my dukes up. I'm ready to go. What's happening? I want to protect the organization. I believe in this place so much. That pause allows you to have that moment where you can go from being to full reaction to factual, allowing yourself to go from emotional to facts. So what's really happened? What did we really get attacked upon? Did they really say something that harms us that much? What is the context of what's happening here? So, and then the other question is part of that pause, which is the one that most people ignore, and that's how they get in trouble 99% of the time. Does reacting make it worse? And 99% of the times when you see things that are happening, especially on Facebook, all it takes is if you put a little bit of gas on that fire, man, can that become a dumpster fire. And it's because we don't often take that moment to just have that pause and realize what is the reaction that they're seeking. And sometimes the reaction itself is the reaction they're seeking. They want to have people, and you guys realize now we live in a world with trolls and other people who all it takes is there's people that go out there and they poke all the bears they can. And the reason they're poking all the bears is because they're waiting for the first bear to growl back so that they can sick the thousands of people that are associated to that cause or their belief or their club or whatever kind of silliness they might be associated to say, I have a common target. We must all attack this group because of what they've just said to me in this response, whether it's true or not, whether they realize the harm that it, the fact that it may destroy your organization that's been around for 100 years. So again, rule number one, pause. Is it worth reacting? Okay. Two, assess responsibility. This is huge. And part of that assessment is to be honest. So if this is low responsibility, meaning the truth is, I don't really think we did this. This is not who we are, then how should we respond? Well, it should be a response of empathy and clarity. If you know you didn't do the thing that you're being accused of, if you know this is not who you are, you can still respond with empathy, but with clarity and saying, well, we don't share that same perspective. This is rather how we saw that. And again, it's not about positioning right or wrong. It's about just saying these are the facts as we know them. Again, only if you think it's justified to respond. Now, if it's a high responsibility, oh, you did this. Somebody just caught you for doing something that you really knew you shouldn't have done. Well, there's only one action, and that's accountability. We live in a world now where accountability is almost something that doesn't exist, except for the nonprofit sector. The reality for the nonprofit sector is we have to depend on accountability. If we are not transparent in what we do, the fact that we're touching public money, public communities, we have public trust, and we have people who pick us every single day. If we're not ready to be accountable for what we are and what we do, then we don't deserve to do what we do every single day. So we need to be accountable for that. And the best way to get past something you've done, if it's actually something forgivable, is to say you did it. From the moment you say you did it, you can find a path to healing afterwards about how you get past it. How many of our organizations have you seen in the last 5 years in Regina been accused of all kinds of things, and some have been true, been able to survive? And what is the only thing that makes it that those organizations are still here today? Because at one point somebody stood up and said, yeah, you know what? We did that. And that's huge in that accountability. And you can start from cleaning the slate and sort of saying, it's not that I'm clean, but I will tell you the truth of what happened. And then we get to decide together whether we're still allowed to have a path forward. That's huge. Now, if it's misinformation, well, then calm response. Totally fine. Literally, people on purpose now put misinformation out there. They'll talk about their experience when they walk into your building and say, I got treated this and such way. I can't speak for you guys, but I'll just tell you, for example, for my organizations now, every single one of my sites, when you walk in, based on the rules that exist, and of course we follow all of them to the T, I have cameras. I have things that are recorded. I have things that are basically viewing everything that we do every single day on the public facing side of what we do, reason, so that when we get accused of things, I get to instantly go scroll back and go, did this happen? Was this actually how this interaction took place between my volunteer and that member of the public? Plus, I have my supervisors on each one of those facilities that can validate or invalidate that information. Now, there's also another state in which we often get attacked, and that's emotional distress. And that's what I was talking about earlier. We have a lot of times where people are in emotional states. I can't speak for you, but I know that the vast majority of the people that are accessing, for example, at Al Ritchie, my food and clothing every single day, we have a rule that we tell our care ambassadors, and the rule is simple. That person who walks through that door this morning might be having the worst moment in their life right before they come through that door. So our job when they walk through that door is not to say, hey, what are you doing? Our job is to say, hey, thanks for being here today. How can I help you? Because it is amazing how much one human being telling another human being, I care you to care what you're feeling like today can do to someone who feels like they have hit rock bottom. And I think that's been the fundamental shift for most of our volunteer training, has been having them understand that the person that they're talking to may very well be having the worst day of their life. And my job and your job is to see how we can improve that life even by 1% today. So when it's an emotional distress issue, we often come back to the private conversation. When somebody just freaks out online for something that you know really didn't take place, but it's because they're going through something, the reaction doesn't need to be public. The reaction just needs to be, hey, I'm going to create a space for you to come in, and I'd love to sit down with you so we can talk about this. I'd love to provide you supports and provide you a path forward so that we can really resolve this and allow you to continue accessing our services. Because you know, the number one thing that most of us nonprofits don't often realize is our reaction sometimes can cost a relationship. When we say, no, we didn't do that, who feels completely invalidated by that statement, they may never put their foot back in our building, but they needed our services. They needed us. So it's not saying no, it's about saying, can we sit down and talk about it? Now, the response strategy, that's what we're talking about. You can move offline, you can reduce audience escalation, you can preserve dignity. And then here's the big one. Who speaks? Who responds from the perspective of your organization? And then here's the second one, which most people forget about. Who doesn't speak? It is so clear in our organizations. We all have people who are loving, amazing people, but who should never talk to the public. They are the best at what they do. They're your cook, they're your janitor, they're your whatever it is, but they're not the one who should be talking to the media saying, this is what happened at our facility today. And so it's really important to have those rules in place and make sure that your staff and your board and everybody understands that. And then really the final thing is, what's the message? What is the most important trying to get through? And then the last thing for this practical framework I think is super important, I've already addressed it a little bit, is people first. We must protect people first. So whether it's internal or external, crisis impacts our staff, it impacts our boards, it impacts our people every single day. We need to have internal clarity. So if we're being attacked on something, it's super important that internally we also have a process that gets to sit down with our staff and our people and say, okay, did we do this? No, we didn't do this. What did we adjust? How should we be adjusting for the future? Why are we being perceived this way? Making sure that we're validating our team, making sure that they're being trained in that moment. Super important. And then you can go to the public. Once you have sort of a strong base within your own sort of foundation, it's easy then to go to the public and have sort of, a whole bunch of questions be asked and sort of all those other things. Now, when we're going to talk about the message, my next slide is really going to talk about how it should be framed. But before I move on, when it comes to this practical framework, sort of the 4 response moves that we should be doing is done. I'll sort of say yes by everybody's reaction. Everybody's cool. Okay, so the next slide is really going to be talking about how you prepare your response when you're actually going to go public. And so really the response needs to sort of have 3 steps. That's what we found. And again, I don't purport to be the end all of all solutions and all of these things. I could just tell you what has worked for me for years and what has worked with us in these situations. So number 1 is you need to acknowledge the concern. If you're going to completely invalidate things that are being said about you, then you're really not even listening. If you're just saying, nope, that didn't happen, you're not going to create a space in which you can actually have a real conversation with the people that are around you. So that number 1 is really important. You need to acknowledge that concern. People want to be heard, but you get to decide how and where. So they want to do it in a public space on social media where they get to put you on blast. No, you can choose to say, no, I'm willing to absolutely have that conversation, but you can bring anybody you want to make you feel comfortable to do that. But we want to sit down and have that conversation in person because we want to be able to find a path forward together. This isn't about social media. And by the way, the number 1 fallacy of social media, everybody remembers, it's not a professional space. It isn't. It's never been a professional tool. We use it to talk about what we do and what we are and all those other things. But social media is not a professional space. It never was. It's a space where people just get to sort of say whatever they want to say, however they want to say it. We use it because we get to connect to people better with it, but it's not a professional space, so it should not be treated as such. Next, you need to reaffirm your mission. The whole point of having this conversation is really tell them what you do. Remind them who you are and remind them on your why. If people realize what you're doing, why you're doing it, it's a lot harder to kind of continue attacking you when you realize all you're trying to do is feed people and clothe people and help people that are in distress back and do all these other things. It becomes less about all of those other things that they're trying to attack you about and reminding them that, oh, wait, you are actually doing some amazing things. And if I harm you, I harm all of that. And then third, you invite that conversation, allow that constructive conversation to take place. But again, you can also shut down and ignore those that aren't seeking an actual conversation. There are a bunch of trolls out there who don't want to talk. They just want to hurt. That's all they want to do. The hard part sometimes is figuring out which is which. I won't deny that. Sometimes you don't know until you're a couple sort of messages in, until you realize you're just being trolled. But once you make that distinction, there's no more need for a conversation. There's no more need to continue doing anything with that person because they will never be happy with anything you provide them. They just want to hurt. That's all they do. So once you've identified that, you create that space and you ignore those who you know that space is not deserved for. That really response. Acknowledge the concern, reaffirm your mission, invite the conversation. For anybody who's authentically sort of feeling hurt, who's wanting to see change, who wants to make sure that they can access what you're doing, or they want something to be improved, they will show up every time. The people who don't, won't. It's that simple. Okay. And I know we're getting close here and I want to leave some space for Q&A. So I'm going to talk to you about what we learned and some of the helpful hints that we've learned along the way. And then I'll kind of tell you guys about where we're at with the situation with the test case. So what did we learn? You cannot control the narrative or the attacks. What the person is going to say about you, there's nothing you can do about it. They're going to say it. I had board members who wanted to spend all their time wordsmithing. We need to correct that word. We need to correct that they said this. We need to correct it. You just won't win in that. Nothing in that that's a winnable. It's not going to happen. You can't control what they're going to say. You can't control how they're going to say it. What you can control is your response to it. You can control the extent of the damage. You can also control the duration of the story. And that's the biggest thing. When it comes to people who just want to harm you and they want to harm you good, they want to make that hurt last as long as they can. So when you're part of the story and you're giving them content and you're reacting to it, it's like a ping pong. Okay, what are they going to say next? Okay, I'm going to respond to it. Oh man, they came and attacked us again. Oh, I got to respond to that one. That ping pong match can last forever if you let it. The biggest thing that you can do is sometimes you have to choose to not respond directly to the person, but respond to the community. Because what you're trying to do is preserve your relationship with the community, even if that means sometimes at the cost of the one person who's attacking you. If you do everything right and you offer every opportunity for that person to maintain that relationship with you, but doing it authentically, and they still choose to not, then your job then is not to continue to have that fight with that person, but that job now is to protect yourself online and in the public and say, hey, we've taken all the steps we know how to do to try to resolve this. We've done all the right things, and we remind you that this is who we are. We remind you that this is what we do. We remind you that these are the thousands of people who access our services every week. We want to stick to that. So if you allow us, would you guys be okay if we go back to doing business as usual? And what we're going to learn from this experience is X, Y, Z. Super important to have those conversations, but it's also super important to tell the community sometimes that you've learned something in that experience. And it's not bad to say that. It's actually growth. Values matter most in crisis, not answers or justification. Who you are and what you do, way more important than what you're going to answer to the attack. And that's the fundamental difference between the nonprofit sector and. Thank you, Chantal. Thanks for letting us know. You got to take care. And hope your next commitment's great. Sorry, everyone. I'm just responding to a message we just got in the chat. So, helpful hints. This is something great for the nonprofit sector specifically because if you're like me, like I said, I don't have a communications director. I don't have a PR department. I don't have any of those things. But what I do know is I know the areas where we're vulnerable. I know the spaces in which people can attack us. And so what you can do is pre-write those responses to the worst things that could be said about you. Take the time to do that in advance. Don't wait for the crisis to show up and figure out, what am I going to say? Try to have some formulaic answers to the worst things that could be said about you. And of course, you'll have to nuance it due to the circumstances of what's being said. But pre-write those responses. Get your board to look at them. Get your board chair to sort of say, hey, you know what, I feel comfortable with. And create rules within your organizations in regards to who's going to respond. Is it a political answer or is it an operational answer? Make your board understand the difference. Do you know how many times half the fighting when it comes to these types of things is having your board wanting to respond emotionally to an operational issue? Well, the board shouldn't be responding. If it's an operational issue, it should be the executive director responding, saying, this is the reality, and understanding the difference. If it's a political one, where they're accusing you of doing something politically that's inappropriate, whatever, absolutely the board needs to have a response to that. But again, you can structure answers to those situations. Assign the spokesperson and the version of the attack. So when is it one person, when is it another? The most important thing, folks, we're horrible at this in the nonprofit sector. Document everything. We tend to just be responsive and we do everything as quick as we can because we're kind of flying from the seat of our pants, doing one thing to the next. If you're like me, you've got open on your desk and you're just trying to deal, but you need to document it. And why is that so important? Because you never know, 6 months down the road, all of a sudden you're dealing with a Human Rights Commission complaint, or you're dealing with something that's come up through another means, sort of, I saw this happen to this client 6 months ago and I feel the exact same way and it was never dealt with and you never responded to it. And it's like, well, excuse me, no, actually we did. And here's the proof that we did. Super important to document everything. And guys, the last one, the most important, we just need to stay calm. We can't overreact. It's so easy. Like, I'll speak for myself, like my company, some of the nonprofits that I've helped rebuild, they don't feel like a job. This is my home. These are people I care about. These are things that are fundamental to my existence that I cherish, that I do every single day. So, of course, my reaction is Papa Bear. I just want to swat the world and tell everybody, no, you're wrong. I 100% know my organization. You're never going to prove me otherwise. But that's not it's not worth doing those things. The best way I can protect my organization is to remind them that we're human beings too. It's easy to slash out at people who just feel like they're just these weird things behind a screen, but it's a whole other thing when you're touching people, when you're hurting people and employees and elected officials who choose to be on a board when there's nothing keeping them there. They don't have a single penny that deserves to sit on that board, and yet they choose to keep investing time and energy in that. People need to be reminded we're human beings too. And I hate to say it, but as executive directors, like, we need to be so thick-skinned sometimes that we kind of just glaze over things. But I know every single one of you loves what you do. You wouldn't do it if you didn't. I know every single one of you does it for a reason, because you wouldn't if you did. I can tell you right now, for those of you who know me, and this is to some of you, because I know Colleen already knows, but I do everything for my kids. So for those people who don't know my story, I've got 4 kids, 3 that are dead, 1 who's alive. My 3 kids who passed changed my life. Rue, who's alive, keeps me going every single day. And if I do what I do, it's because I want to make them proud every single day. But that also means that if you want to cut me to the quick, if you want to make sure that I hurt, you do something that's going to hurt my family. You do something that's going to hurt what I love every single day. People use that. We are all human beings, and that's okay. Crisis communication is one thing. But after everything is said and done, the last piece of advice, take care of you, please. Nobody else will, especially in the ED position. You guys know this. We are isolated, we are alone, and we rarely have people who ask us how we're doing. So do me the big favor at the end of the day, and when you get home, do whatever you need to do to take care. So those are my helpful hints. That's what we learned. My final message: trust is built slowly. It's tested often. It can be lost in an instant, or it can be strengthened if you stay true to your values and what brings the public into your space every single day. Rely on the heart of who you are in your worst moments, Remind the world why you matter, and more importantly, why they do. It is amazing if you just remind the person who's attacking you that you actually care about them, the amount of times you see their shoulders drop. They were there to destroy you. But once they found out that, holy crap, you actually care about me, maybe I don't need to attack you right now, and maybe I just need to realize that you're a place that I can trust and I can come to every single day. Final message. This was useful. I hope there was something human about everything I just said. I know time's running out, but I just want to leave a couple of spaces for questions or comments or overall. What do you like? What do you not like? Did you learn anything today?
That was awesome.
Yeah? Thanks, Jackie. Appreciate that. So, any comments, questions? Are there any things you guys want to share? Is there something that going through this? Again, the reality is we're all humans. So sometimes I know that when we go through these presentations, it can feel like, I don't know who to talk to when I feel this way. Well, I'm a nobody. I'm a guy who does what I do because I love what I do. On this final slide, you guys have got my cell phone number and my email. If any of you want to jot it down, jot it down. The only way we survive in community is to be in community. So if you guys need someone to talk to, you need to go have a coffee break. Yeah, is anything that really is important for you? Yeah, just jot those things down. I'm always available to everybody saying thank you in the chat. I appreciate it. Um, and yeah, I just look forward to seeing all of you thrive. Now, if you guys find yourself in crisis and you feel alone and you don't know what to do, I'm happy to help. I'm sure there'd be tens and 20 of us who'd be willing to help. None of our nonprofits need to be alone when they're facing the world sometimes, and it feels super heavy. The only way, and I think Colleen is really working on this so that we feel collectively as a community, is to remind ourselves that we're not alone in this. So here we are. I'm here. I'll put my hand up. I'm willing to stand up next time somebody attacks you. Just let me know how, okay?
I just had a comment. I really appreciated when you were talking about, people complaints and treating people with empathy. I think the few times that we have experienced that, we know where those people are coming from. And I just really appreciated that. Sometimes I think the best response is little response when people are going through things and you're aware of that. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
I've often find that, and this is the best for like, I'll just speak as a guy, and I know it's unique for guys like me to be running some of these organizations. I love it when I get these like 6'4" giants who are walking through the door that are just pissed off about something, and the first thing I do is I hug them. I love it because their entire face just like, what? Oh, okay. I love it because it completely changes the narrative from all of a sudden they thought they were coming to fight this 6'1" big guy. I'll be honest, I'm 6'1", I'm 265 pounds. I'm not a small fella. And so their instinct is to automatically go into that fight or flight mode. And then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, are you okay? You want to sit down? The face transforms in 1 second. I love that gift. I love just meeting people where they're at and realizing that they don't have to be here to fight. We can have a conversation. Any other comments or questions? If not, I just want to applaud all of you. We don't often have enough of us in the nonprofit sector who tell each other that we care, tell each other how much we appreciate what you're doing. I know every single one of you are trying to change the world. And honestly, the only way we're going to keep doing it is if we keep doing it together. So I appreciate all of you and thanks so much. Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Colleen.
No, thank you so much, Denis. It was such a pleasure to have you, and the fact that you speak from the heart, and stand true to your values, I think really shone through this presentation. And again, like you said, that is part of this space is we're aiming to create more spaces where we can come together, be with each other, share, learn, grow. And yeah, I think the everyone is saying great presentation. I'll say it again, but I think really what stands out is speaking from the heart. And so we really, really appreciate that in your time today and your offer of support as well. And I think that is, like you said, so important that we are there to support and hold each other up in those really challenging times. So from my end, This is the last Growing Nonprofit series of the semester. Our students are just wrapping up the semester this week and moving to their final exams, and then we have the Reimagining Nonprofits Conference on May 1st and 2nd. So I hope you will join us there, and I'm really excited. The conference is going to be, I think, great. And again, another space and opportunity for us to talk about some of the really challenging things that we always do and deal with, but together and hopefully take away learning and then also deeper connections with the folks that are doing this work. I'm just putting in the chat a feedback form. For me, it's always helpful to know how this series is impacting your work. If it is, if you have topics or suggestions that you'd like me to include for the next round of the Growing Nonprofit series, I welcome you to fill it out and make those suggestions, because it's always helpful to me to build sessions that are constructive and supportive for the work that we're doing. I don't know all of the ins and outs of everything that folks are dealing with. I hear from people, but feedback on what could be useful for the next sessions is really, really helpful. But thank you all. I wish you a wonderful day, and thank you so much for your wonderful presentation, Denis. And I hope to see many of you at the Reimagining Nonprofits Conference.
I'll be at the conference. I hope to see you all there.
Thank you.